Well, we've got a big update on the ongoing conflict between Greece and Turkey, or at least the war of words, as it were. It hasn't sparked into any sort of armed conflict yet, but we are still marching down that road. And today, as a part of, I would assume, an attempt to deter this, France signed a mutual defense pact with Greece, and you would say, well, France and Greece are both in NATO. What do they need a mutual defense pact for? Well, the answer is, of course, that Turkey is also a member of NATO. So if Greece and Turkey get into a war and there's some confusion over, who started the fight, who fired the first shots, who are the other members of NATO supposed to, come in on the side of? Who gets to invoke the NATO treaty? Is it Greece or Turkey? And that will probably be something that will have to be adjudicated. And in the meantime, Greece and Turkey will be hashing it out by themselves. So France decided to create a new parallel agreement, a bilateral agreement with Greece, essentially saying, no, we really do got your back. And if anything happens between you and Turkey, we're on your side. Now, my guess is that this is supposed to help deter the Turks, because, as it stands, it's pretty obvious that Turkey is a more powerful military than Greece. And so Turkey can, please excuse the thunderstorm in the background, but Turkey can kind of push Greece around to a certain extent without a huge fear of retribution, because, they are bigger and stronger than Greece for the most part. But the combined forces of Greece and France is something that does threaten Turkey. And, if they have to deal with the French Navy in the Mediterranean, perhaps that is something that the Turks do not want to deal with. Maybe they'd be happy, going to war with the Greeks and maybe winning some rights to territorial waters, which I'd imagine that would be, what any sort of peace settlement would be. If Turkey beats Greece in the war, they would make them sign some treaty saying that Greece can, explore for natural resources, in these disputed areas in the Mediterranean, where Greece says, these are our territorial waters, and Turkey says, no, we get to, those are international waters, we get to do whatever we want. However, with France on their side, it's not such a sure thing that the Turks would win in such a conflict, and so it changes the calculus. However, as of today, the Turks do not seem spooked. Now, if they were, I wouldn't imagine them to say it publicly, but they still seem quite belligerent towards the French. Towards the French, please excuse the noise, I bumped into something. And they have their points. I mean, France, it's not like France is coming in here as a totally disinterested party and saying, oh, well, we think that Greece happens to be correct in this case, so we're going to side with Greece. France, in other recent bouts of international conflict in the Mediterranean region, has sided against Turkey. The most noteworthy example would be Libya. In Libya, Turkey backed the Tripoli-based government of national accord, and Macron backed Khalifa Haftar, who is pretty much out of the picture now. It seems that things did not go well for him, and that the side that France was hoping to come out on top and establish a new military dictatorship was unsuccessful, in large part thanks to the assistance from the Turkish military provided to the ragtag band of militias defending Tripoli. And so France now has the opportunity to come and be a thorn in Turkey's side and side with the Greeks when they are, engaged in this dispute with the Turks. And of course, there's also the whole threat that France is a nuclear power. Now, I don't think that there's any chance that even if France were to get into a war with Turkey on Greece's behalf, that they would ever use nukes. But generally speaking, you don't want to go to war with a nuclear power. Although I think that is something that you have to worry much more about, if you are also a nuclear power. It's a much bigger threat when you have two nuclear powers engaged in war, which has never happened and should never happen and must never happen. Whereas, if you have one power or two countries and one of them has nukes, the other doesn't, you're fairly safe to assume that the nuclear armed state is not going to resort to using nukes unless they're, under the threat of being totally vanquished, which I don't think that the Turks will be sacking Paris anytime soon. So that's not really an issue. Now, as to the relative naval strengths of France plus Greece versus Turkey, I have no idea. I've not studied their navies. I do not know how they would match up against one another. I don't know if France could easily vanquish the Turks. I don't know if they'd be evenly matched. I don't know if it would be, if the Turks would be still at somewhat of an advantage, even if you take Greece plus France. But I know that it definitely would be much more challenging than taking on, Greece alone. Now, Macron is going heavy in on the Neo-Ottoman narrative, which is something, at least those of us in the West who follow these things have been hearing for a long time, that, Erdogan wants to be the next sultan. I'm not sure. I mean, the Turks say that is just sort of a BS Western fear porn, and I somewhat am sympathetic to that argument, because you really can draw comparisons between any modern sort of aggressive leader and aggressive leaders from that country's past. It would be a very low-hanging fruit to compare some kind of, aggressive or assertive German leader with Hitler, for example. Same thing is true in Spain. If you have an assertive, aggressive Spanish leader, you could say, oh my gosh, it's Franco 2.0. Well, in the same case here, yes, Erdogan is rather assertive and aggressive and wants to assert Turkey's influence over the region and show that Turkey is an important regional power. And so, yes, it's true that the Ottoman Empire also, was a big power in the Mediterranean that controlled Egypt and Libya and Greece and the Levant and many other areas around there, because they were the successor state to the Byzantine Empire. But to call Erdogan, directly a sultan in the making is probably a bit of an exaggeration, just because, from a practical standpoint, I think the Turks probably understand that that's not reasonable. Sure, maybe, if he could, if Erdogan had that much power, would he want to? Hey, who wouldn't? If you're somebody who's already wanting to expand your influence, why wouldn't you want to control the entire, Mediterranean and restore, your nation's lost empire? It's just like with when Mussolini said similar things. Mussolini wanted to rebuild the Roman Empire, but did he come anywhere close? No. He barely could conquer Ethiopia, and that's because, I think that Mussolini was a much more arrogant man than Erdogan. If you had Mussolini in Erdogan's shoes, he probably would have already tried to invade Greece and likely would have lost. So I think Erdogan's a bit smarter than that. I think he's just, he's taking things a bit slower and trying to assert, he's picking his battles, in other words. And this is a battle, this is a hill that he seems to be willing to die on. I don't think that Erdogan would have come this far if he didn't intend on pushing harder. It's very similar to, if you think about the situation with Cyprus back when the British were withdrawing from Cyprus and they were going to make it an independent country rather than a colony anymore. The Turks wanted to assert their influence there, and so they essentially had all the Turkish citizens of Cyprus rise up and kick out the Greeks from half the island and declare it the Turkish, Republic of Northern Cyprus. It's a very, small sort of action, but it is still, of course, towards that end of reclaiming old Ottoman territory, since Cyprus was a part of the Ottoman Empire. But it was, a measured sort of action. They didn't try and conquer the entire island and, push the Greeks into the sea, which they're talking about so much right now, pushing the Greeks into the sea. They definitely are, acting like they're very much ready for war. But again, if it came to war, what would that turn into? Would it turn into the Turks trying to take back a bunch of islands from Greece and move Turks there to colonize them? I doubt it. I think it would be just trying to achieve this limited settlement over the territorial waters, just pushing Turkey's influence a little deeper into the region. But anyway, I mean, arguing over the semantics of what you want to call current Turkey, whether you want to, use the Neo-Ottoman narrative or not, it doesn't really change the facts on the ground all that much. It's really just window dressing, because the fact of the matter is, Turkey has these goals that they want to achieve, and I think that having Macron on the side of Greece gives Greece much more of a bargaining chip. It gives Greece less of a reason to give in without a fight. They're backing it up a little more, so it'll be difficult, probably, based on what I'm seeing, for Turkey to pressure Greece into signing any kind of an agreement that is net favorable to Turkey without a fight. We're kind of watching them play a game of chicken now, because before it was essentially the Turks were the bigger guys in the room saying, hey, do as we'd like or else. And now the Greeks are able to come back a little stronger and say, back off or else. And so we are one step closer to a conflict. And, I'll tell you what, if you have France and Greece versus Turkey, that's a real war. That's not just a simple game. That's not, Britain going and kicking dirt in the face of the late-stage Argentine junta. This is not the Falklands War that would, just be wrapped up in a matter of a couple weeks. I think it would be a serious conflict, the first, actual war in Europe in quite some time, I guess, unless you count the war in the Donbass. But that was, almost more of a civil conflict. It wasn't a direct war between two states. You didn't have Ukraine and Russia say, hey, we're going to send our troops into battle with one another. It was more covert stuff, more asymmetrical. So anyway, I'll be keeping an eye on this situation. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.